Alright, this is a video I'm doing kind of as a thought dump, um, just for, people who might relate to being a computer science major within the last couple of years or so. Um, just kind of wanted to talk about things, get my thoughts out into the open, just because kind of helps that way, because, oh, why did I start with the, whatever. What was I saying? I can't even think straight now because I realized I started with this thing. Um, anyways, so within the last couple of years, I graduated fall of 2023, and it seems to me that we are absolutely cooked. Um, so about a year ago, I gave up on oh, Mr. Whisker's interruption. About a year ago, I, hey, I know, I know, I know I said that wrong, buddy. Don't yell at me about it. Um, anyways, about a year ago, it had been a year at that point that I was applying to jobs, and I experienced the full thing. So, never hearing back is probably the most common thing that happened. Getting the rejection email at fucking midnight, getting the rejection email within an hour or two of applying. Uh, that's a classic. But probably the worst was making it to final rounds of interviews and then getting ghosted after that, and that was really painful. Because these companies like to build you up. They hype you up and be like, yeah, they told me like, yeah, it's just you and one other person, right? What you doing, Goober? What a silly feline. But yeah, they told me, it's just you and one other guy. I'm like, all right, let me solo, right? Let me do this, easy. And so I studied for that, and thought I was gonna get it, but I got ghosted right after, so that was quite nice. Um, but anyways, like I said, I've been applying for about a year, and at that time, AI was really starting to pick up, and I kind of just got to a point where I was a little fed up. Well, there was that, and I needed something to get going. I needed money. And so after applying for a year and applying to hundreds of different jobs, I gave up. And I was like, maybe this AI thing will roll over. As it's commonly said these days, hopefully the AI bubble will burst. Um, and I just got a job in retail, retail slash sales. And that's been going well. I'm able to pay the bills. And I do admit part of me did get a little complacent because of that. But nevertheless, I was still, even after getting that job, I was still studying, I was still interviewing. And actually, that is when I made it to the final rounds of interviews and got ghosted was a couple of months after I got this retail job. So they're really disheartening. And at this point, I've been at that retail job for a year, and it's kind of a point for me to look back and be like, I'd gotten that job for what I believe was only the summer. I didn't think I was going to be there longer than 2 months, and I've been there for about a year. And, at the very least, I did put substantial effort into... Wait, I popped my runes and then died. It's okay. Yeah, anyways. So, I didn't think I was going to be there for that long, and I've been there for a year, and so... The other night, I kind of thought, you know what, let me look at the current job market. Let me look at LinkedIn, look around my area, see what's there. And there's nothing. I mean, if you have been applying to computer science jobs within the last couple of years, you know how competitive it is, and you know how hard it is to get anything going. And so when I pulled up LinkedIn, I think I found about 30 results that it gave me, and about only half of that was relevant in like actually entry level positions. And that's the key to what I'm talking about in this video, is entry-level positions in software engineering. Because of course that's what's getting replaced, with AI, because, AIs can handle all of that grunt work for you. They don't, there's no training period and stuff like that. And so with that being said, when I looked for entry-level positions just the other night and saw that there was nothing, it kind of just hit me like, wow, what now, And so, a few things have crossed my mind since that moment, and strangely enough, it's kind of relieving in a way, because I mean, there still is the stress on me, but there was so much more stress of, I'm not being competitive enough, I'm not trying hard enough, which, I was trying quite hard, to no avail. And, I was questioning whether or not I made the right choice in kind of throwing in the towel, because it just felt like it was just completely helpless. Especially because around that time period, a lot of experienced engineers were getting laid off, and so now they were entering the job market. And so it was pretty common knowledge that, companies were then able to be more picky with who they were hiring and who they were interviewing, because, well, there's now a lot more people with a lot more experience than just entry-level positions. And so why spend X amount of money on this entry level and then more money to train them when I can spend Y amount and then hire this guy who's already experienced? And so, I understood that, and yet I still tried really hard, but nothing came to fruition. So, that's when I gave up. And now that I see that there's nothing, it's kind of, I mean, it's concerning, because I don't know what to really do at this point. And, you're even seeing popular figures, or well-known figures, I should say, like Mark Zuckerberg and Linus Torvalds, I think I said his name right, creator of Linux, use AI themselves in some code they've been writing. And so it kind of gets to a point where, I want to wait for the AI bubble to burst, because my goal was to become hired into some company. I was really flexible. I didn't really have a preference for what sort of software I wanted to work on. I just wanted to make software. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to code, wanted to be given problems. I wanted to use my problem solving, and because that's what fulfills me, really. So I really resonated with computer science and, software engineering. I kind of wanted to be a code monkey, to be honest. I know that's not that's not the highest level in the ladder, but I don't know. That's just really what I wanted to do for a while. And unfortunately, that's the easiest position to get taken by AI, because, well, AI codes really fast and effectively. Of course, if you're vibe coding, that's a whole different story. But if you're a very knowledgeable engineer, very experienced, and you're using AI to kind of code with you, you're going to get some serious stuff done, because you're able to review its code, you're able to catch bugs, all that good stuff. Whereas, like vibe-coded websites are, pretty garbage, and their security is really bad as well. But, enough backtracking with, no, sidetracking, sorry. Anyways, putting that to the side. The question for me, just like I said, becomes, what do I do now? Some things have crossed my mind. On my channel I do have some videos. So like for a little while I was experimenting with like content creating, but I kind of find that I don't really like doing videos where I'm speaking, because I kind of feel like I'm funny, but I just don't think I'm interesting enough, I guess. And like I live just in a one bed, one bath apartment with my girlfriend, so I feel like it'd be really disturbing as well. She is in school right now going for her master's, so I feel like I don't want to be yapping all the time and trying to make videos and, do all that stuff. So that is one thing that's crossed my mind. But, of course the biggest thing is because I want to use my degree. right? Everyone does. You spend all this time and money to get a degree, you want to use it. And so for me, it's, if I can't use my degree to get into a position anywhere because, either they want experienced engineers, which I have no experience. Like I have some internship experience, but I mean, I'm too honest, which, is surprisingly a bad thing in interviews because, they ask about my relevant experience and I'm like, well, the title says one thing, but when I was actually there, they didn't really have me coding, which really bummed me out. But, then they kind of realize, oh, this guy has really no experience, even though on paper it looks like he does. And I feel like that's a big bummer for me because I feel like I can really figure out a lot of stuff on my own. I do learn fairly quickly, but, of course companies, right, they work a certain way and they stick to that, and I don't really blame them, but wish they would give most of us a chance, but I can understand the pros and cons for sure. But anyways, if I can't get into a position anywhere, then I have to kind of do something on my own. And so I've considered making games, making applications, especially with AI being as strong as it is and easily accessible. I feel like, well, now's the opportunity to get something rolling and actually be able to push something out in a relatively quick and efficient manner. But at the same time, I feel like with data centers ravaging the lands, I know that sounds very dramatic, but with data centers being what they are and affecting cities and stuff like that, it almost feels unethical to use AI, if that makes sense. And so I'm kind of at this point where I do want to make everything by hand, still. And I feel like I can really do that with games. I feel like that's quite easy to do, especially if I make something nice and simple, right? Because some of the most effective games are ones that are quite simple. Flappy Bird fucking exploded. That's the... What? What happened? What just happened? Um... I have no idea how... Well, if I don't post this video, I'm definitely posting that clip because I don't know how that Knight Rider died. That might be a new cheese for people to use. Anyways, so where was I, dude? I don't even know. I'm so distracted. But yeah, I've considered making games, considered making apps, but I think with so many people making a bunch of stuff, it kind of just feels like I'm just dropping some water into the ocean. Does that make sense? And it's not going to get known, it's not going to get seen. And so I feel like with that, a solution would be to, market it. So maybe make an Instagram page, promote it, talk about it, get people excited, that kind of thing. But it just kind of feels like, with everything that has happened in the last couple of years, with programming for me and computer science and all that stuff, you can't help but compare yourself because you're constantly being compared to with everybody else from, or by employers. So you're being compared to other candidates. You're, told that there's a lot of experienced engineers right now, so you're not very desired. And it's like, I understand that. And I feel like I have the potential, but, imposter syndrome really, really sets in. So, I feel like I could do it, but is it really... Would I make something that would really stand out that much? That's kind of the big thing I worry about. And it's unfortunate because I always get into this state where I'm so concerned about what the best move is that I end up not doing anything at all. So I'm kind of just here, especially after the other night and seeing that there's nothing left. It's kind of like, well, what do I really have to lose at this point? So another option, of course, would be to kind of get really good at my job because it is kind of sales. There is some sort of commission aspect to it, but not really. It's weird, but at the same time, you can make more money if you sell more. That's the bottom line. So I oftentimes do, I have put time into learning about products and learning how to communicate that effectively with people and, learning what people are there for, what they need help with. And I'm just a very real person, so I do build that trust with people that I work with. Even if that results in me getting smaller numbers, because that's, of course I'm there for the paycheck, but, I can't do that to people that I don't even know. Does that make sense? I'm not that kind of guy. So my other option would be to kind of dig in deep and just really focus on that, which I could do, but there's always going to be this lingering thought of, well, what are you doing with your degree? You spent all this time and money getting that. What are you going to do with it? And one thing that did cross my mind is, if I did just make an app or a game, even if it doesn't pop off, at least I can point to that and say, hey, I did use my degree, but that feels really, I don't know if superficial is the right word, just like very surface level. Yeah, you made that, but like, what of it, You didn't get anything from it, because I feel like anything you do, there has to be some kind of result to it, right? Of course it's worth giving it a try, but can't be that proud of it. I mean, you know what I mean? So I feel like I need something to be a success for me to feel okay with myself. Because otherwise, I have this, I don't want to sound like a cornball, but yeah, I got this piece of paper that's really not doing anything for me. So, at the same time, like, yeah, I did learn about stuff. I can pick up on things a little bit better than other people, especially when it comes to tech. Especially in the workplace, like somewhere like retail, you're not going to have the most tech savvy people there, so you will have more of an insight, but like, you can give a fun fact, you can help with a certain issue on the computer, but I mean, what else does that get you? They're not going to pay you more for that knowledge, right? So it's just like, I don't have anything that I can point to and be like, yeah, I used my degree for this. At one point, I did code a script using Python for my laptop because basically my laptop would die from like 25% battery. It would just die instead of 0. And so I made a custom script to play an alert when my laptop's battery reached 30%. So that way it wouldn't just suddenly die on me and I'd have no ability to catch that. So, like, I can make stuff for myself, but, if it doesn't pay you, then I just feel like, I don't know, it just feels like I could just get a lot of people to point at that and be like, yeah, you're not doing anything with it because it's not coming to fruition, it's not giving you anything. So you really did just waste your time because, I don't know, and the worst part is that script, that I made is useless now because my battery is so fried that actually I have to have it plugged in all the time now, so so that script I don't even use anymore. But yeah, there's definitely like a lot of things that I have made, and I've made some scripts with Python to, help with certain things. So when my girlfriend's doing a lab and needs to, do the same computation over and over for different values, I just make a script real quick. And it just continuously prompts her for the inputs, and then we'll just do the computation because it's like a really long, formula. And so it's like, yeah, it's really nice that I can do that, and it's nice that I got a degree and I can do that. But at the same time, it just doesn't feel as good because, when it comes time for rent, and it comes time for groceries, and it comes time for date night, and, I'm looking at my bank account worried about, do I have enough money for this? And it's like, well, if things had gone better with my degree, maybe I would never have to worry about that. Like, everything would be fine. I have stress, of course, at work, but I'd rather have stress at work than stress about, the little things in life, if that makes sense. And so, you know, I just don't really know what to do. And so I think over time I'm trying to really change that about myself. The whole if you haven't used your degree, then what's it for? Because I definitely use it from time to time, just with making quick scripts, for quick things, stuff like that. But it just feels so artificial, if that makes sense. But so does my feeling for needing to use it. But I feel like there's definitely a lot of pressure from society and from within myself and everything to make use out of it in such a way that impacts my life significantly. Because yeah, I make these small things and stuff like that, but it doesn't feel like it means anything. Even though it's nice, it's useful for what it does, but you know what I'm sure you know what I mean. But with that being said, I really did not think that entry-level positions would be cold. I didn't believe AI would be able to do that. And it's really disappointing to me because I understand, with jobs going virtual, as far as, applying to them, I understand that companies do need to, filter through them somehow. There's no way they're going to have somebody, go through everything, all like, 500 job applications. I do understand that. But, there were a lot of CEOs that, they would run their application through it and they would get denied. I never looked into those to see if that really happened, but if it did, then it just goes to show you that, it's just out of your hands, and that's what I really dislike about everything. Because I gave a serious effort, I tried networking, I tried applying, or I did apply, I should say. I studied my ass off. I I tried so many different things to get something going with software engineering. And it just seemed like at every turn, things were just out of my control. So, yeah, nobody expected AI, you know, and so, you know, that's out of my control, and now it's taken over, and it's everywhere. And the only thing I can do is hope that either the AI bubble bursts, which is a common phrase, or kind of what I've been hoping for is that companies realize that AI, or not realize, but I hope it gets to a point where AI is more expensive than people. Because it seems like everybody wants a piece of AI, and people who make AI want everybody to have a piece of it so they can charge more and they can make more money. Because, the United States is run off of capitalism, and it just seems to be about the biggest increase and the biggest number, which really annoys me as I've gotten older, because I feel like there's a point where you can be satisfied. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's because I'm at a point in my life where I'm struggling that now I'm just like, because before I started struggling in life, it was really easy for me. I didn't have any financial problems, and then I just, got to the point where, okay, it's time to get a job. And things are just out of my control. I did what I could. And granted, I do think I could have tried even harder sooner for sure. Um, but of course, like everyone says, had no idea that AI was gonna be like that. And it frustrates me because I wish it didn't take that much for me to have tried harder. Um, if that makes sense. Like I wish I just gave it my all from the get-go, because I will say I got like some kind of position with software engineering that it was like training AI. I don't know if people really have heard about it. I've seen quite a lot of ads for it, so maybe you have, but data annotation. You do train models, that kind of thing, And it was legit. You know, I was doing it for, I mean, maybe a year. Um, kind of like soon after I graduated, um, into a little bit after I moved to where I moved to, and then it just got to a point where I wasn't experienced enough to keep up with it, because obviously AI models get stronger, so they need more challenging input. That's quite simple. And I had nothing to really offer it. I mean, I don't have a complex code base to. Oh, I'm dead. Never mind. I don't have a complex code base for it to read through and sort through and all that stuff. I can't verify that what it's saying is correct because I don't know if it's correct. I'm not experienced. And then it just kind of became more scarce and scarce, and I realized I need some other form of income. And so that's when I got the um, retail job.
All done?
So yeah, like I did have that position. So like I guess I could say that maybe I should have realized that that wasn't sustainable, and I should have just gotten a physical job. But at the same time, you know, hindsight is a hell of a thing, right? Um, you wish you could know everything before it happened. Of course we can't. But I feel like I don't even know if it was a mistake because I did make pretty good money off of that, and you know, it wasn't really keeping me afloat, to be honest, but it was doing pretty alright. And even with my current position, you know, I tried going to the software side of that company, and it turns out all the software positions in that company had been changed from remote or, you know, hybrid or in person to all in person, and as conveniently like 5 states away. So, you know, I wasn't going to relocate for that, especially because I wasn't really too much of a fan of the area. And I know that sounds like, oh, well, you got to take what you can get, right? Well, I'm also living with my girlfriend, and she's pursuing a master's, so I'm not gonna, I can't do long distance, so I'm not gonna do that. And also, you know, even if she wanted to follow me, she looked and there were really no schools out there that she was a fan of. And you know, the only reason I moved was to follow her and be with her as she pursued her master's. So like that's the only reason I'm here. So basically I had to find something in this area, or I had to, and I tried really hard and nothing worked. So part of me is kind of relieved that I gave up when I did, because I feel like if I had just kept sticking to that online job I had and you know, applying to jobs, I really am convinced that I would have never gotten anything, because I kept seeing the same jobs pop up. I kept applying to the same jobs, and you know, of course, of course, the worst part is, the worst part of the job market is that there's ghost jobs, which is unbelievable. There's ghost jobs. There's jobs meant to just collect data. It's unbelievable that companies are allowed to do this. It's a huge waste of time, because probably the worst thing is when you tailor your resume to a job just to find out it's to collect data, or that it's a ghost job, or that you get rejected within, you know, an hour of applying, and you applied at like 11 p.m. so you know nobody read it. And it's just, it felt like such a huge waste of time. And so I am glad I stopped when I did, to be honest, but I wish I didn't have to. And now I'm at a point where there's just no option anymore. And so I feel like to get something going for myself with software, with my degree, I have to basically get my own product out that is, you know, successful. But I don't know, it feels like I don't really know what other option to go for, I guess. I've always, you know, I think a lot of people who play games always wish they could just do content creation because, you know, why wouldn't you enjoy to get paid while you play games, you know? It's kind of like a no-brainer. And all these streamers and all these content creators that are like, yeah, I'm just so exhausted. Like, that seems like, dude, be for real. You're playing games and talking to people. It can't be that hard, right? Especially when you compare it to, you know, like a real job. My job is, you know, I'm blessed. My job is quite easy, and I get paid pretty all right from it. So, you know, can't complain at all. Um, but for like successful content creators, it's even easier than that because, um, you know, you're playing games. It can't be that crazy. I do feel like it could be like a creative block, but either way, I'm getting sidetracked. I'd love to content create if I could, but that's obviously like my problem with that is just that, you know, I do live with my girlfriend, um, so I would not want to really like take up a bunch of time doing that because it feels silly. You know what I mean? Like I am a I am a grown ass man, right? Can't be making content like recording myself playing and especially like clickbait and stuff. I really hate clickbait. It's so stupid. But I don't know. It feels like, dude, if you're not like, if I spent 6 hours making a video, editing it, putting it out there, stuff like that, versus spending 6 hours like making a game, it feels like there's no question as to which one feels more productive. Does that make sense? Because it feels like, oh yeah, making a game or making an app, you're using a degree, you know, it's something that requires, um, how do I even say this? Something that's more challenging, I suppose, and more worth spending time on. And I guess when it comes down to it, you know, there's always the argument of like, yeah, or I could be doing crack, or I could be just day drinking all the time. Like, yeah, obviously, but, you know, as a productive adult, you know, what would you rather be doing? And kind of a problem I have right now is I do play quite a bit right now on my days off, just because I don't know what to do. Um, and you get that feeling where, you know, you're playing and, wait, I'm an adult. I should be doing something productive. I should be doing something else. I shouldn't be doing this. And so it's just this terrible feeling. So I don't know what to do. And then if I were to start working on an app, start working on a game, start content creating, all of those things feel like, well, what if this doesn't work out? What if I'm just wasting my time? And then so I get stuck and I get reverted back to just wanting to do nothing. Because I don't know the optimal way out because, well, I don't have a what is the word I'm looking for? I don't have a magic orb to see into the future and know, hey, this is gonna work out, right? So it's just a terrible feeling, especially with, you know, the economy being the way it is and prices skyrocketing and all this stuff going on. It just feels like, what should I be doing? Because, you know, mind you, we will be moving here soon, so you know, life will be a little bit more affordable, hopefully. Surely. But, you know, we're looking to move into a cheaper place, and so things should get a little easier then. And I've kind of been thinking, okay, you know, maybe I'll wait till we move, alleviate some stress off of me. But again, it's one of those things to where, just like before, I don't want to have to wait. I don't want to have to alleviate stress off of me. Like, why can't I just go? Just do something, right? That's kind of what I feel like, but at the same time, like, I can't help but just be worried that what I'm going to do is just waste time. And then I end up wasting time anyways because I don't do anything and I just play games. And so, like, I have a good time, but it's like, you know, you have a good time, but you're like the whole time you're realizing like I could be doing something else, and you just feel guilty. Um, Especially because, you know, when I get into games, I really get into it. When Night Rain, when Elden Ring came out, and when the DLC dropped for Elden Ring, I spent so much time playing these games. especially because at the time I had only finished Dark Souls 3, but it was like hazy for me. I wasn't really good at it. But then I found Gino, and seeing him play the game and seeing how he plays just opened my eyes. I was like, wow, you can just run around and dodge attacks that way. You don't have to roll every time. You can, like, all this different stuff, whatever. Anyways, long story short, I get into it. So I do commit a lot of time to games when I get sucked into it, and it just feels like all that time I spent doing that, I can be doing something else to try to be successful. And it's just a lot of pressure. And I don't know if I'm putting the pressure. I mean, I am putting the pressure on myself. It's a stupid statement. I am putting the pressure on myself. But it definitely feels like the pressure is also coming from external sources. So I feel like, society would view me as a failure. My family might view me as a failure. Um, I certainly view myself as a failure because, I didn't get a job in the software engineering field. And, it doesn't really hurt me saying that. It's just a simple fact, you know? And it sucks because, like, sometimes my family will say they're proud of me, and I'm like, I just, I feel bad because I can't, like, sit there and like, I guess be grateful because I don't feel like I'm proud. And, you know, what am I doing that's a result of success? I got this retail job with a degree I spent 4.5 years on. That's, a job that's not related to my degree. So I don't feel very proud. I don't feel very successful. I'm making better money than minimum wage for sure, which is, of course nice. You don't want to. If I was making minimum wage, I'd be even more upset for sure, and broke and nearing homelessness, to be honest. But that's besides the point. Anyways, I don't know. It's a tough time, and it feels like for my generation, like the timeline we're in as we approached adults is just, I mean, cooked, right? Cooked. I mean, all these ghost jobs, AI looks at your resume before a person does. You never get feedback. Even if you do interview, you don't always get feedback. Unless you reach out, but even then, there's a chance you won't because you get ghosted. But anyways, there's just a lot of uncertainties. A lot of don't know what to do with entry-level jobs seeming like they're officially gone. I guess it kind of narrows it down for me a little bit more to A, B, or C. So either, make something with software, make something with content, or I don't know if I talked about the other option, but I could try to just get really good at my job and make more money that way. But I don't know. There's just always that pressure of not using your degree to get money. Does that make sense? That's really what it boils down to. Are you using your degree to get money? And if not, you're not doing something right. But, even acknowledging that, a lot of things were out of my control, it just feels like it still doesn't change how I feel too much. It definitely does a little bit, but, there were things I probably could have done to try to better secure a position, especially during college. Oh my God. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't make connections. I didn't network. I didn't talk to my professors. I didn't really get quality internships. And the worst part is, I feel like, because to be real, in college, my dream was to get into game programming. Because I was like, dude, I love games. I love working on games. Because at that point, I had coded a couple of games. Small things, nothing crazy. And it just felt so satisfying for me to see something, come to life like that. And so that's what I got internships for. But these internships didn't give me any game programming experience. And on top of that, I couldn't translate that to software engineering because I didn't code a single thing. And I know that sounds crazy, but I did not code a single thing. There was coding around for sure. There were other people in the same position coding, but they said, oh, you work on this, you work on this. And I'm like, dude, when am I going to be able to code something? Because now when I go to these interviews, I can't say, oh, this internship was in game programming, but yeah, I did code this, this, and this, so I have some experience or I have some experience that I can translate into software engineering because I worked on this code base. I worked on this, right? I can't. And I'm a little too honest, which sounds crazy, but yeah, I'm a little too honest in interviews because, they'll ask about my internship experience and I'm like, well, to be real with you, like I had experience with, working within a team, communicating, planning, different concepts within software engineering as a whole. So if you're familiar, like sprints, stuff like that. So basically, um, you know, planning out what to do, communicating those plans and stuff like that, and taking action and reporting that, all that stuff, whatever. So like I did have that, but how good is that really compared to actually getting your hands dirty with the code base and interacting with it and learning how that works and stuff like that? Working with branches within a repository, all that good stuff. Nothing. It does nothing for me. And I can't help but not lie to these companies, which looking back at it, these companies don't care. They don't care about you. And yet I cared about them quite a bit, and I didn't want to lie. I wanted to be truthful. I wanted to show them that, even though I didn't have great experience, I'm a quick learner. I'm a thorough learner as well. And I can, prove that, but they want experience. They wanted to see that you did have experience doing something because they didn't want to hire just someone who basically was full of promises and nothing more, right? Which totally makes sense. But it's unfortunate because, even in my current position, I've never had experience selling anything or working with people like that. And so, but now I'm definitely, I don't want to, I don't like tuning my horn, but I am pretty good. I wouldn't say I'm one of the best, but I'm pretty good. I'm quite helpful. A lot of people like working with me. A lot of my customers do. I'm very helpful. I have a lot of information that I've just learned on my own. My company didn't teach me anything when it comes to information regarding the product I'm selling. I went out of my way to learn that. And I feel like I can do that, with coding especially because I'm much more passionate about coding. But, it's not as meaningful as having actual experience. And so with that, I definitely got screwed over out of a lot of interviews because I just didn't meet that requirement of having experience. And it's the classic, you gotta have, I've seen some absurd stuff. I did see one time where an entry-level position required, like 8 years of experience? I was like, dude, you're joking, right? I mean, so, and that was like for real. That was on LinkedIn. That wasn't a meme I saw on Instagram. That was for real. I was like, wow, okay, this is interesting. Not sure if it was a mistake. It probably was, but still, at the same time, a lot of entry-level things required 3 to 5 years of experience. That was kind of the average thing you saw a lot of the time. And so, what the? I don't remember ever seeing this. Anyways, that's a lot of what I saw. So it's like right off the bat, I just never had a chance. And that's very defeating because now there's just nothing left, is what it feels like. Or not what it feels like. It's literally what I saw. There's nothing left. And so it just feels like I had never had a chance. I was never given a chance. And it's very disheartening, but, I definitely feel like I dodged some sort of bullet for sure. Um, and I'm working with what I got. I'm making it work, so it's not super terrible, but it just feels like I wish it could have been more, if that makes sense. And I feel like my timing on graduating was awful. My timing on applying to jobs was awful because, again, things out of my control. Um, whether it be AI, whether it be experienced engineers falling out, or I mean, sorry, getting laid off, and now applying to the same companies that I was applying to, it just feels like I never ever had a chance. So what was it all for, you know? And you kind of reflect on that because now I'm in this position where I had all these expectations. People had expectations from me, and I'm not meeting any of those expectations. And it feels like it's my fault, but I can also see it's not really my fault. But I can't help but, pin the blame on myself. So it's just a really, strange position to be in. I don't really know what to feel. Don't know what to do, as I've already mentioned like 100 times. I don't know what to do. Um, it feels like I can't enjoy my free time without feeling just an enormous amount of guilt on me, and just, and I've heard that's pretty normal, just not feeling like you can enjoy your time off. It just sucks because, especially with the economy, oh my God, prices and stuff are just really getting up there. And granted, it's cheaper here than where I was living originally, so that is nice. And the wage I'm earning right now is comparable to what I want to say minimum wage was around in my original area. So it's like things are better than what they could have been, before I moved, I guess. So it's like, obviously not the end of the world. I'm still doing what I can so I can kind of find some comfort in that. I am still doing what I can. I haven't completely given up on everything. Like I may have given up on computer science and going that route, but I haven't given up on everything. So I am still making it work, which is nice. Um, it's just a real shame because, you know, wish it could have worked. And sometimes I wonder, what life would be like if that had worked out, but I'll literally never know. Unless something happens with AI and companies are starting to hire back real people. Because, there is the glaring problem that, if you do cull all of the entry-level positions, well, as soon as your senior level engineers, mid-level engineers, as soon as they are done, who are you going to have to replace that? Now, I don't know if the game plan is to use what they did as training data, for these AIs, but I I really don't believe that AI could ever fully replace people. I always think there's going to be some kind of position to at least review the code. Because there's plenty of examples right now of vibe coding, which is just atrocious. Um, so it's just, to me, I feel like there's always going to be some kind of job, but it doesn't seem like I'll ever have a chance unless they open up entry level once again. And so, um, with that being said, obviously, life's not over. There's always something else you can do. But I don't want to go into sales. It could be lucrative, but that's just not my thing. And I think it's lucrative mainly for people who kind of do people dirty and make them think they need what they don't need. And that's kind of just capitalism as a whole, right? They always try to convince you of things. But I don't like doing that. I'll convince somebody if they're blatantly wrong. If somebody is trying to buy, you know, if someone's trying to buy a screwdriver to take out a nail from a piece of wood, I'm gonna tell them that's probably not a good idea. Like, obviously. Like, I'll be objectively, I'll convince them if they're objectively wrong, but if it's just preference, I, you know, I'm not gonna do that to people. I just, I don't know, that's not my thing. But I feel like you kind of have to do that. You have to do that for sales. But, you know, I don't know. It's just confusing. It's overwhelming for sure, but at the same time, kind of not overwhelming. Um, I'm at a state where I'm kind of like, I don't know how you say it. It's like there's so many. I mean, actually, it's exactly like what I was saying earlier. It's that thing where I want to pick the right thing to do, so I don't do anything inevitably because I don't know what's the quote-unquote right thing because um, I can't see the future. And I definitely feel like I need to, at some point, wrestle with those thoughts of, I have to use my degree. I feel like, if you, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of examples of people who have degrees in something and they just don't use it and they're still, doing alright. But I feel like in order for me to feel alright with not using my degree, I have to do something that's successful. Does that make sense? But to be successful right now, there's no clear route because there's no jobs for me, and so I have to do something just completely on my own. And with everything I've gone through, do I really trust myself to do that? To do something that's going to work? That's kind of what it boils down to. And obviously the question is, I don't know. I don't know if I can. I've always kind of questioned whether or not, I know what people like, or, I'd want to make a game that I like. Maybe other people like it. Sure, maybe. I feel like I'd be more passionate about that than, for example, making some sort of application that may be useful to people. But at the same time, I just, I have no idea. And I kind of feel like everything just feels like a waste of time for me, if that makes sense. So like I spend a lot of my days off, doing chores around the house, cleaning, I'll cook, because those do feel productive. I feel like within the day I can do something and have a tangible result that's necessary. And I feel like with something so long term as, making a game or making an app or trying to content create, that's just, you don't get the immediate feedback. You don't immediately know if it's going to work. Every successful content creator has been going at it for a long time. They don't just become successful overnight, right? And they just kept going with it, and I don't know if I can really do that because I feel like if I were to make, content for a year, and if nothing was still, if it was still not picking up, I would just feel like the most colossal failure on the planet. I mean, there's no other way to go around that, I feel like. So, alternatively, well, actually, I think if I made a bunch of apps, if I made a bunch of games for a year and nothing came from that, I'd probably still feel as worthless. I don't know if it would be exactly the same, just because, at least, hey, I did use my degree, I did try, so maybe it'd be a little bit better, but, at the same time, it's just, with nothing, with no other route being there, basically, it's kind of comes down to, like, what choice do I really have? Um, Especially with companies, I feel like over time, and as I've lived life as an adult for the very short time I have, as a full independent adult, I should say, it's like you really realize it really is just about the maximum profit for these fucking companies. You know what I mean? And it's like, as much as I dislike it, I would have to, or I would, obviously I'm in a job right now, so it's like, my company's goal is inevitably the same thing, right? What's the highest increase I can get? And, I am playing a part in trying to have them accomplish that. And so, like, obviously I'm gonna be a part of it. But it's just because I have to, because I need money, I need to live. But like, it just feels like I really dislike companies at this point because it feels like it's never enough for companies, if that makes sense. I remember hearing about, Arizona iced tea and how their CEO was like, well, we haven't increased prices because we own everything. Like, there's no reason. I've done everything I've had to do and I'm successful, and it's like, I can really respect that. You know what I mean? You still go to the grocery store. I see Arizona's, the tall cans for 89 cents. It's like, wow. You don't see that at all from like any other company. But like every other company just does that. They just try to increase profits as much as they can, and it feels so ridiculous. And anyways, like what I'm trying to get at with this is that like it makes me so bitter that I cannot get a job because of that same mindset, because we can save money with AI, because we can increase productivity and thus save money with AI. And that's the really frustrating part too, because it contributes to that feeling of everything's just out of your control. You can only do so much. And that's the part that I really, really hate. You have no idea because, when you're in school, you have complete control, for the most part, over your grades, right? Sometimes you get a terrible professor and they throw something on the test that you haven't even covered. There's that possibility, but as far as being successful in school, that's all you, bro. That is, you try hard, it's probably going to work out. And so when you get to life and you try as hard as you can and nothing's guaranteed, it's like, wow, what do you mean? Why? And once you pinpoint all the reasons why, it's like, holy shit, this fucking sucks, you know? And I wish it could change, but obviously that's, you're talking about things that are just way out of your control and things that, we just got to play the game. You know what I mean? Life's just one big game. You just got to play it. Can't really change the rules. I mean, I guess you could, right? You could do stuff, but that's just getting like, that's getting very, that's like getting so off track from what I'm trying to say, but it just sucks. Is long story short, it just sucks. But with that being said, with things that I can do, I guess from the reasoning I gave earlier, it's kind of like the most optimal thing would be to just try stuff with my degree, because then at that point I wouldn't be as disappointed. But at the same time, I know myself and I know I'm gonna feel like I'm wasting time on something that I don't know if this is gonna work. I don't know if this is popular. There's all these I don't knows, and it always feels like to me if I don't know, then I'm not gonna do it. And I know that's so stupid because I'm sure every successful thing has had the same questions come up of oh, goodness gracious, you bastards. Hey, no. But anyways, it's like every successful thing probably has had the same thing. They've had their ups and downs probably, but I just feel like I think a big factor to it is that like I'm not alone. I have to support my girlfriend and our little cat. So it's like I have to make something work. Does that make sense? And it's not like I have no income, right? Like we're stable kinda right now. Not really. We're paycheck to paycheck, but still. It's not like I have to get something working within the next couple of months or else I die. But at the same time, I don't know. It feels like I have to get something done within the next couple of months. Does that make sense? It just feels like I have to get something working. Because if not, again, just wasting time. So, anyways, I think I've been running in circles enough. I think I've gotten all the points out that I've wanted to. Like I said, it's just saying stuff to kind of clear my mind and get my thoughts out there. And if I say it out loud, how does that sound? How does that feel? Um, Especially with what I want to do next, because now it's free game. There's no, I have to study for this interview. I have to glaze this company. There's no more of that. And so it's like everything that I was doing a year ago has been completely flipped on its head because that's not an option anymore. So, you know, it's a really interesting kind of place to be in because I've never, I never once thought I would have to be in this position where it's just completely up to me. And I just, it's, how do I even say it? Like basically all of my free time, I have the choice to do something that's impactful. Now it's not in my free time, let me try to study, let me try to learn about this company for the interview, let me try to, do all this stuff. Let me network, let me connect, right? There's no more of that. And that's a really weird feeling because it feels like of course there were a lot of uncertainties with applying and interviewing, especially in software. You have to do like 4 or 5 rounds of interviews. That's very common, and so it's one uncertainty after the next because will I pass round one? Will I pass round two? All this stuff. What's going to be on all this stuff? But now it's like you're telling me now I just have the option to just work on an app, work on a game whenever I want, and hope it actually does something for me. That's really, it's such a bizarre concept to me when all I ever wanted was like a stable job and to I guess have a relatively easy life with that job. That's really all I wanted because especially when as soon as you get your first job, assuming you don't get fired within a couple months, now you have experience under your belt. Now you can move around and you can negotiate for higher salary and you can do this, and you can do that. But now it's like I'm on my own. It feels like I've been abandoned by society, and I know that sounds really dramatic, but a lot of entry-level software engineers I'm sure might feel the same way. What about us, right? But to companies, it's just about the bottom line. It's just about the increases. It's just about the profit and productivity levels. And it's a shame for sure. But I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of reaching a breaking point of, well, now I have to do something. And I know that's been the theme of this whole video. And I do apologize if I'm being repetitive, but um, hopefully if you're using this for background noise, it's just, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter as much. But um, it's just really interesting, especially because, to be real, at my job, like, again, not a bragging point, but like I do get a lot of people trying to hire me. I'm not sure if that's because, they like how I work or if they're just trying to poach from where I'm working, but it kind of gives me some confidence that, I can, get good at something pretty quickly. And if I try that on something that might, benefit me in a financial way like that, maybe I can get something actually going. But it's always the, it's always the uncertainty of it where I'm just like, I don't know. And I definitely feel I definitely feel very cringe if I were to like make an Instagram account or something like that for marketing of a video game or an app. unless it was very cool, if that makes sense. And I know that sounds stupid, but like, dude, that one like dinosaur sword fighting game, like that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. You know what I mean? Um, but I definitely feel like even if I were pushing out something like that, I would feel so cringe, like making posts about it and being like, "Hey guys, here's my progress, this and that." Um, but like I also understand that it's kind of a necessity, especially if you have people hyped up for it. You have to show updates because otherwise, what are they hyped up for? But it just feels so cringe, right? Anyways, that's just a stupid sidetrack. That's just a dumb sidetrack, but um, yeah, just a crazy time to be alive. I don't know if entry level positions would ever open up again, um, but I feel like, especially with the amount of people that went into computer science and the amount of people that were applying and trying to get jobs, it almost feels like, I don't know if the same amount of people would be still applying. That doesn't really matter though, right? That's a problem way down the line potentially, like years from now. So I feel like that's really unimportant. That doesn't really matter. But I guess all that matters is what to do now. So, you know. And I feel like it's definitely painful in a way to see how successful a lot of other people are. And I think that's a big problem, with social media and stuff like that. Like, a lot of people I personally know, just things are going right for them. And it makes me feel like I just chose the wrong path, if that makes sense. Like I don't know, I don't know how often you guys see this, but I'm in like, I don't know if I said my age, 24, but like a lot of people my age, they're getting married, they're getting houses, like things are going right for them, and I'm like, you know, if only I chose a different path. I really wish for a large part that I chose something that would not get impacted by AI. But at the same time, like how would I have known, right? And I feel like I'm just a very computational person to an extent. And so I kind of feel like a lot of stuff I would have chosen would have gotten replaced anyways. I don't know if that's extremely pessimistic or not, but I don't know, like, some of my friends are teachers. Obviously, that's not getting replaced anytime soon. But I feel like personally, I feel like that's like one of the worst jobs to have right now. Personally, these kids are ridiculous with their chat GPT. And I know I sound like a boomer saying that, oh, these daggone kids with their AI. But at the same time, right, like I've seen a lot of videos of teachers complaining that kids literally cannot read. Like it's not a roast. They literally cannot read and stuff like that. But then like other people, I don't know what jobs my other friends have, but like they're successful and it's like, wow, I just chose really wrong. And it's like, well, what can I do, right? You know, but you know, don't really know what else to say. Um, don't really got any other thoughts. Kind of was just trying to spill the last of maybe what I had in my head. It's feeling quite empty now, so it's nice to kind of openly reflect. Of course, if anybody kind of relates, I know it's very hyper specific with my exact situation, but if you are struggling with computer science, and maybe if you've also seen that, jobs are currently just gone, well, you know, there's a lot of us out there, I'm sure, that are feeling the exact same way. So, you know, we just all kind of have to decide what to do. That's really it. And hope stuff works. And yeah, yep. Yeah. Anyways, I think that's about enough yapping. Um, don't really think I have much more else. So, Yeah, I will see you guys in maybe another video. I don't know. I guess we'll see which route I go. If if this video is followed by a bunch of different videos, maybe I'm going the content creation route. But I really doubt I'm going to go that route. I think I think I'll just feel like garbage if I do that for a while and nothing comes of it. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I don't know. Who see? Oh God. Who knows? Who knows? Um, might just change my mind. I kind of do that a lot. So, yeah. All right. I will see you guys. Have a good one.